The bathroom door creaked open, and I froze, my breath catching in my throat. There he was, Elliot, my stepson, submerged in the clawfoot tub, his dark hair slicked back, eyes wide with shock as they met mine. In that split second, the world tilted, and something unspoken sparked between us, a dangerous current that neither of us could name. I should have turned away. I should have apologized and fled. But my feet stayed rooted to the worn tiles of our old Brooklyn brownstone. Elliot didn't move either, his chest rising and falling, water lapping softly against his skin. The steam curled around him like a veil. And I swear, in that moment, I saw not just the boy I'd known for 3 years, but a man vulnerable, beautiful, and achingly aware of me. James, he whispered, my name barely audible, a plea or a question. I don't know what possessed me, but I stepped closer, my heart pounding like a drum in a quiet room. I was 38, a widower, a father figure to this 19-year-old who'd come into my life when I married his mother, Claire. She was gone now, taken by cancer 2 years ago, leaving us to navigate this strange, fragile bond in a house too big for just two. Two didn't mean two, I stammered, but my voice betrayed me, thick with something I couldn't admit. Elliot's gaze didn't waver. He sat up slightly, water dripping from his shoulders, and I saw the scar's faint lines across his chest, remnants of his transition, a quiet testament to the courage he'd shown the world. I'd always admired him, but this was different. This was dangerous. I'm okay, he said softly, but his eyes said something else, something that made my chest ache. You don't have to go. I should have gone. God, I should have. Instead, I knelt by the tub, my knees pressing into the cold floor. You're shivering, I said, noticing the goosebumps on his arms. Without thinking, I reached for the towel on the rack, my hands trembling as I draped it over his shoulders. Our fingers brushed, and it was like a spark igniting dry grass. His breath hitched, and I felt it to the pull, the forbidden warmth that had been building for months, maybe years, in stolen glances and late-night talks. Elliot had come out to me a year ago, his voice shaking as he told me he was trans, that he'd been on hormones since he was 16. I'd held him then, told him I was proud, that he was enough. But now, in this humid, quiet bathroom, that pride twisted into something deeper, something I couldn't say out loud. Not yet. I'm sorry, I said, pulling back, my voice rough. This isn't right. Isn't it? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He reached out, his hand catching mine, and I swear the world stopped. His touch was warm, tentative, but sure, like he'd been waiting for this moment as long as I had. I wanted to tell him no, to remind him I was his stepfather, that this was a line we couldn't cross. But the truth was, I didn't want to let go. The days that followed were a blur of tension and avoidance. I buried myself in work, restoring old furniture in the garage, while Elliot spent hours sketching in his room, his music drifting through the house, soft indie tunes that made my heart ache. We danced around each other, polite but distant, like two magnets afraid of their own pull. But every night, I replayed that moment in the bathroom, his eyes, his touch, and I wondered if I was losing my mind. One evening, I found him in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, a mug of tea in his hands. The light from the street lamp spilled through the window, casting shadows across his face, He looked older than 19, his jaw sharp, his eyes carrying a weight I didn't fully understand. "James," he said, setting the mug down. "We need to talk." I nodded, my throat tight. I knew what was coming, and I was terrified not of him, but of myself, of what I might say, what I might do. "Elliot, we can't. Why not?" He cut in, his voice steady but laced with pain. "I see the way you look at me. I know you feel it too." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. He stepped closer, and I could smell the cedarwood soap he used, the same scent that lingered in the bathroom that day. "I'm not a kid anymore," he said. "And you're not my dad." "Not really." Those words hit like a punch. He was right, I wasn't his father. Not by blood. Not even by law anymore. Not since Claire's death dissolved the legal ties. But I'd raised him, hadn't I? I'd been there through his tears, his triumphs, his transition. And yet, here he was, standing in front of me, not as a son, but as a man who saw me in a way I couldn't ignore. "Elliot," I said, my voice breaking. "This could ruin everything. Or it could be everything." He replied, his eyes searching mine. He reached out, his fingers grazing my arm, and I didn't pull away. Not this time. That night, we sat on the couch, closer than we should have been, talking until the sky turned gray. He told me about his fears, his dreams, the way he'd always felt like an outsider, even in his own body. I told him about my loneliness, the way Claire's death had left a hole I couldn't fill, the way he'd become my anchor without me even realizing it. We didn't kiss, didn't cross that final line, but we were too close, and I knew we were teetering on the edge of something irreversible. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk. Every glance, every brush of shoulders in the hallway, felt like a confession we couldn't voice. I tried to keep my distance, but Elliot was relentless, not in a demanding way, but in the quiet, steady way he'd always been. He'd leave sketches on the kitchen table, delicate pencil drawings of cityscapes, or my hands working on a chair. Each one a silent message. "I see you. I'm here." One night, I found him in the backyard, sitting on the old swing Claire had loved. The air was crisp, the stars sharp against the Brooklyn sky. He was wrapped in a blanket, his breath visible in the cold. I sat beside him, the swing creaking under our weight. And for a moment, we just existed, side by side, the silence heavy with everything we weren't saying. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted finally, my voice low. "I don't know how to be this with you." Elliot turned to me, his eyes catching the moonlight. "You don't have to know," he said. "Just don't push me away." I wanted to argue, to list all the reasons this was impossible, our history, the age gap, the world that would judge us. But then he leaned in, his lips brushing mine, soft and hesitant, and every reason crumbled. It was just a moment, a fleeting press of warmth, but it set my heart on fire. I pulled back, my hands shaking, but his eyes held no regret, only certainty. "I'm not sorry," he said, his voice steady. "I've wanted this for so long." I couldn't respond. Not then. I stood and walked back to the house, my mind a storm of guilt and desire. But the truth was, I'd wanted it too. I'd felt it in every late-night conversation, every time he laughed at my terrible jokes, every time his hand lingered on mine. And now that the line had been crossed, there was no going back. The next day, I found a letter tucked under my workshop door, written in Elliot's neat, slanted handwriting. It was short but raw, every word cutting deep. James, I know this scares you. It scares me too. But I've spent my whole life hiding who I am. And I can't hide this. Not from you. If you tell me to stop, I will. But if you feel even half of what I do, please don't run. I read it over and over, my hands trembling. I wanted to burn it, to pretend it didn't exist. But instead, I folded it carefully and tucked it into my wallet, a secret I carried with me. That evening, I found him in his room, sketching by the window. The tension between us was unbearable, a live wire ready to spark. Elliot, I said, my voice barely steady. We need to be careful. If anyone finds out, no one will, he said, setting his pencil down. This is ours. Just ours. He stood, closing the distance between us. And this time, I didn't pull away. Our kiss was slow, deliberate, a promise and a risk all at once. His hands found my face, and I felt the weight of his trust, his courage, his heart. I'd never felt so alive, so terrified, so whole. But the world wasn't as kind as that moment. A week later, I got a call from Claire's sister, Margaret, who'd never warmed to me. She was in town, wanted to visit, to check on Elliot. My stomach dropped. Margaret was sharp, perceptive, the kind of person who'd sense something was off. I told Elliot we had to be careful, to act normal. But the strain of hiding was already wearing us down. Margaret arrived with her usual flurry of opinions, her eyes narrowing as she watched us. At dinner, Elliot's hand brushed mine under the table. A fleeting touch. But Margaret's gaze snapped to us like a hawk. You two seem close, she said. Her tone clipped. We're family, I said, forcing a smile. But my heart was racing. Elliot stayed quiet, his jaw tight. And I knew he was fighting the same battle I was to keep this secret, to protect what we'd found. That night, after Margaret went to bed, Elliot slipped into my room, his eyes fierce. I hate this, he whispered. I hate pretending. I know, I said, pulling him close. But we have to. For now. He nodded, but I could see the hurt in his eyes, the weight of a love we couldn't fully claim. And as we held each other in the dark, I wondered how long we could keep this up, how long we could outrun the truth. Margaret's visit stretched into days, each one a test of our restraint. Elliot and I stole moments when we could a glance in the hallway, a whispered word in the kitchen, but the secrecy was suffocating. I saw the toll it took on him, the way his shoulders slumped when Margaret was around, the way his sketches grew darker, more chaotic. I hated it too, but I was older, used to burying parts of myself. Elliot was different, brave, unapologetic, a flame that refused to dim. One afternoon, while Margaret was out, I found him in the garage, sitting on my workbench, his legs swinging. I can't keep doing this, he said, his voice raw. I want to be with you, James. Really be with you. I crossed the room, my heart in my throat. I want that too, I said. But if this gets out, it'll destroy us. You know that. He looked at me, his eyes fierce and wet. I'd rather be destroyed than live a lie. Those words broke something in me. I pulled him into my arms, kissing him with a desperation I hadn't known I could feel. It was reckless, dangerous, but in that moment, I didn't care. I loved him, God help me. I loved him and I was tired of fighting it. But fate has a way of intervening. That evening, Margaret walked in on us in the living room, our hands entwined, our foreheads pressed together. She froze, her face a mask of shock and disgust. "What the hell is this?" she spat. Elliot pulled back, his face pale but defiant. "It's none of your business," he said, his voice steady. "None of my business." Margaret's voice rose. "You're my nephew, and she's your stepfather. This is sick." I stepped forward, my hands raised. "Margaret, please. Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," she snapped. "I'm calling the family. You won't get away with this." She stormed out, and the silence that followed was deafening. Elliot looked at me, his eyes wide with fear but also resolve. "What do we do now?" he asked. I took his hand, my heart steady for the first time in weeks. "We face it," I said. "Together." The next few days were chaos. Margaret made good on her threat, and soon, calls and texts flooded in Claire's cousins, old friends, all demanding answers. The judgment was relentless, but so was Elliot. He stood tall, refusing to hide, refusing to let them shame us. I was in awe of him, his strength, his fire. We decided to leave Brooklyn. The brownstone held too many ghosts, too many memories of a life that no longer fit. We packed up, sold what we could, and moved to a small coastal town in Maine, a place where no one knew our story. It wasn't easy starting over, rebuilding, facing the whispers that followed us. But every night, as we sat on our porch, watching the waves crash under the stars, I knew it was worth it. Elliot taught me what it means to live authentically, to love without fear. He'd fought for his truth long before me, and now he was teaching me to do the same. We weren't perfect. There were arguments, doubts, moments when the world's weight felt too heavy, but we were real. And that was enough. One evening, as we walked along the shore, Elliot stopped and pulled out his sketchbook. He'd drawn us, standing together against the ocean, our hands clasped, our faces lit with quiet joy. "This is us," he said, his voice soft. "This is home." I looked at him, my heart full, and I knew he was right. We'd found something rare, something worth every risk, every judgment. Love, in its truest form, doesn't ask for permission. It just is. And as I kissed him under the fading light, I realized that our messy, beautiful, impossible love was the most human thing I'd ever known.